Okay, we're going to begin our presentation. I'd like to welcome everybody to the ISO 9001-2015 Preparing for a Successful Transition webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski and I am the Technical Director of Perry Johnson Registrars. Couple of logistical notes. Everyone is on mute. If you have a question, I'll direct you to use the question portion of the dashboard. We will definitely make time for all the questions we get. We want to make sure that everyone has their questions answered and feels ready to proceed. Let's go over our list of topics. First of all, a little bit of a history on where these standards come from. We're going to discuss the reasoning behind the change on this occasion. We're going to review where we are in terms of the timeline. We're actually very close to completing a step in the timeline. We're going to have an extended discussion on the key changes to the standard. We're going to assess the need for an overhaul to your current system. I'm sure for many of you that's a big question. We've got some frequently asked questions that have been asked in past presentations that we've added to the presentation. Hopefully some of your questions will be answered in that way. Some final points, and then as mentioned, we will address your questions. So let's begin with a discussion of where the ISO 9001 standard and where all of the standards come from. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. It is a collective. It's made up of numerous international members, including those from the United States and all over the world. Each of the standards that ISO publishes is assigned to a technical committee, or TC. And TC 176 is the committee specifically assigned to ISO 9001. And TC 176 itself includes members from each of the major industrialized nations. And here in the United States, our representation on TC 176 comes from ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. So as to why the standard is changing all over again, feels like we just transitioned to ISO 2008 and here we are changing again. The ISO recognizes that the needs of the industries that use ISO 9001, those needs have changed, those needs have evolved, and the standard itself has to evolve and keep up with the times, so to speak. Obviously, ISO wants to see ISO 9001 utilized in more sectors, more industries, increase its footprint in the world market. This particular occasion has given them a chance to simplify some language that's used in the standard. This has been intended to aid in understanding and to promote consistency, not just consistency between auditors, but between certification bodies. Make sure that we're all on the same consistent page. I'm sure some of you on our presentation today have been frustrated by differences in interpretation from one auditor to the next and so forth. Well, the ISO wants to try to address that as best they can. And the larger goal associated with this rewrite was a desire to improve the cross-compatibility between the standards. There's many companies out there, perhaps some of you are on our presentation today, that have more than one certification, ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 being a prime example. In the past, this has meant for a lot of companies two sets of documentation, two separate systems. If you can imagine a company that has 3, 4, or even more certifications, this is quite a difficult thing to achieve. So the ISO wanted to have a structure that would be more accommodating to blended systems for those companies that want to pursue 2 or more certifications. The TC 176 chairperson, Nigel Croft, expressed some key goals that the committee is striving for with this most recent update to 9001. Now the first two of these have been around for some time. The third one represents new thinking. First of all, we're continuing with the idea of process approach. Processes existing at the systematic level, at management, processes that are based on results, processes that seek consistency in what we do. And we want to have a cycle of plan, do, check, act. PDCA is definitely still a part of this standard, both at the process and the system level. The whole idea that we carry out processes in a structured manner, we check what we do, and we take actions accordingly. The new idea is this larger idea of risk-based thinking, preventing undesirable outcomes. Now we're going to dig in a little deeper to what risk management and the whole idea of risk and how it's spread throughout the standard. But this is the new idea. These are the three most important goals for the new version of ISO 9001. So the timeline for transition, we are coming towards the end of the middle, so to speak, in the development of the new standard. Let's talk a little bit about where we have been. Back in June 2013, we saw the publication of the committee draft. Now this was kind of a limited distribution document. Pretty much just the TC 176 committee members were the ones that got it. That in turn gave way in May of 2014 to the Draft International Standard, or DIS, and that is the stage that we are at presently. We're very near the end of that phase. Next month, early in July, we're going to see the official publication of the FDIS, or Final Draft International Standard, and in turn, in September, we will have the official certifiable ISO 9001 2015 standard. Now looking way ahead, in September of 2018, all of the ISO 9001 2008 clients are expected to have transitioned to the new standard, a 3-year transition period. So as I said, right now we're at the very tail end of the DIS phase. The DIS 9001, when it was voted on, received a 90% approval from the members of the TC 176 committee. That approval meant that the FDIS was going to be published on time, and indeed we have confirmed it will be published on time next month. The work that was done, and this work for the most part is finished, was to incorporate the comments from the voting members, those that approved and those that rejected the DIS. All of the tweaking that's being done is intended to ensure a swift and decisive approval vote on the FDIS to ensure publication as ISO 9001 2015 when September rolls around. Now, a couple of key things to keep in mind. The September 2015 publication date at this point is looking very firm, very sure. But obviously there's little things that can happen along the way that can add weeks to the process. So that September 2018 cutoff does not take hold until the standard is officially published, and it's timed right to the day. So if the standard is published on September 23rd of this year, that means the cutoff will be September 22nd, 2018. So they will time it right to the day. Now the cutoff in September of 2018 means that registrars like PJR will have to establish their own internal cutoff for doing a transition audit, for how long can we still offer ISO 2008 audits and so forth. Those decisions are still being made here at PJR. Obviously, when those decisions have been made final, we will share all of that with you. We expect to have that information very soon. We can confirm that in May of this year, our management team met to discuss the need for additional audit time. to properly assess a quality system transitioning from ISO 2008 to ISO 2015. And we concluded that for most companies, a small amount of additional audit time was going to be sufficient. Obviously, a larger company, a more complex company, may require some additional audit time. Each of you, if you are already certified through PJR, you will be advised on an individual basis what additional time is going to be necessary. Let's talk a little bit about the key changes. ISO 9001:2015 is going to be among the very first of the ISO standards to make use of the standardized structure called Annex SL. Now, Annex SL has been referred to as the high-level outline. You may even see that abbreviated as HLO, Annex XL. It's part of a larger publication, and that is the ISO IEC Directives Part 1, procedure specific to ISO. This is sort of the standard that tells you how to write standards, and Annex SL, as the name implies, is an annex to this item. Now, you can actually read Directives Part 1 in its entirety. We've got the link here at the bottom of this particular slide, and there's a lot there. Not much of it pertains to what happens at the organization level, but it should give some insight into why the standards are written in the way that they are. So Annex SL, for its part, it was published in 2012, and it represented the output of a special committee, the JTCG. And what the committee came up with was a 10-section blueprint. And this blueprint is going to be used to author all of the ISO family of standards. All of those standards, ISO 14000, OSAS, and all of the other standards are going to follow this structure. It promotes common terms, core definitions. The idea is that all of the ISO standards will be transitioned to this document by 2016 or 2017. And of course, that's a lot of standards. There are many, many ISO standards, each with their own technical committee that needs to go through a transition process to align with Annex SL. Annex SL is a 10-section structure. The first 3 sections are very similar in purpose to the first 3 sections in ISO 9001:2008. Scope, normative reference, terms and definitions. Each of these is an introductory clause. There's no auditable content within these sections. Our first bit of auditable content comes in Section 4. Section 4 is called Context of the Organization. There's some new terminology here talking about interested parties and the context. We'll be getting into some of that a little bit later. Sections 5 and 6 are called Leadership and Planning. Leadership is a new term. We'll be discussing that a bit later, but there's a lot of what should be familiar pieces here. We've got management commitment, responsibility, and authority. This is the new placeholder for the quality policy statement. In Section 6, we have planning, and this is where you'll find the primary clause that pertains to risk. We'll be doing an in-depth analysis of that in just a bit. Some familiar items here as well: quality objectives, planning of changes. Section 7 is called support. This is the new placeholder for competency, training. The new term documented information is found here. We'll be getting into that in just a little bit. So I want you to think of sections 4, 5, 6, and 7 as foundation sections, sections that establish a foundation for a quality system. Section 8 can be thought of as the execution of the quality system. It's very similar in structure to the current Section 7 from ISO 9001:2008, the one that we call product realization. All of those day-to-day pieces are here. We've got operational planning. We've got purchasing activity is here. Production control is here. Now you'll note at the very bottom of Section 8, that last bullet, non-conforming goods and services, has been aligned here. Follows a very logical progression in terms of what's been placed here. This is the day-to-day operations of the organization. And then the standard concludes with sections 9 and 10, and these both kind of pertain to the monitoring of the system. Under performance evaluation, we've got kind of the familiar monitoring and measurement. We've got internal auditing, management review, and then the standard concludes with section 10, improvement, where we discuss corrective action, and then the ever-present idea of improvement. Now, in terms of digging in a bit further to what the key changes are, we're going to spend the next several minutes looking on kind of a page-by-page basis to see what's been changed here. So let's begin with an assessment of some content that's been kind of rolled in together. Now, this is based on the DIS 9000 document, of course. We note that the terms and definitions that were formerly found in the ISO 9000 document, those have been incorporated. The quality management principles, of which there were 8, there are now 7. Each of these has got a sanctioned rationale. This has meant that the DIS, in its current form, it's a long document. It's over 50 pages long. But again, only 17 of those pages represent auditable or certifiable content. We do know that ISO 9000 and 9004 are also going to be updated in the near future. At present, we've not gotten any further information on what those updates are going to pertain, but obviously we will prepare a separate report on that and share that with you when we find out. Okay, let's dive right in with the requirement that seems to have everybody really quite concerned, and understandably so. It is new, and that, of course, is risk. Now, the term risk appears 18 times in the current draft standard, and the way that it's been viewed, the way that it has been structured, risk is viewed as a system-wide strategy. Some of you on the discussion here today, some of you on our presentation may remember when we transitioned to ISO 9001-2000. The new idea at that time was continual improvement, and this was explained then and now as a system-wide strategy. That's very much how risk management is being viewed in this new standard. Now, it's been emphasized many, many times over that a formal documented risk management process is not going to be specifically required. What this standard is doing is expanding the idea of risk aversion to one that affects all of the various areas of the quality system. Now let's read the verbiage from DIS 9001 for just a bit. When planning for the quality system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in section 4.1 and the requirements referred to in section 4.2 and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed. First, to give assurance that the system can achieve its intended results, to prevent and reduce undesired effects, and to achieve continual improvement. There's a lot in here that should look familiar to you, and we're going to draw some clausal linkages to ISO 2008 in just a moment. Let's read the back end of section 6.1. The organization shall then plan, once you've determined these items, you shall plan the actions to address risks and opportunities. You shall plan how to integrate and implement those actions into your system and evaluate the effectiveness of those actions. Any actions that are taken to address risks and opportunities need to be proportionate to the potential impact on the conformity of products or services. Okay, let's draw some clausal linkages here. Obviously, I'm going to jump down to the third bullet here. The most obvious connection that can be made is Section 853, preventive action. Preventive action is all about assessing potential problems and taking action to avoid those items in the first place. It's absolutely going to be a component of the risk management process. I know that for many companies, the word has been preventive action's going away. It really isn't going away. It's being rolled out in a new way as part of risk management. Management review, the management review meeting process, absolutely is going to be part of this. Assessing your system and the whole idea of having targeted improvement efforts. Absolutely, that's going to be part of risk management. In Section 7.2.2, reviewing requirements related to the product. Assessing customer expectations against what you are capable of doing to resolve discrepancies. That's absolutely risk management. And then Section 6.2.2, training, assessing your competency needs and taking steps to ensure that personnel are fully qualified, fully competent. All of these activities are rooted in risk management. So for those of you that are already certified to ISO 9001-2008, fear not. You've got a lot of things that you're already doing that are going to help you meet this requirement. Okay, let's keep going with some other changes that are presented by the new standard. First, some key changes in terminology. Procedures, records, and documents. All of those terms have been eliminated, and the new term that has been introduced is documented information. Now, what they're going for with that term, they want to be more inclusive in accepting alternative approaches. In particular, they want to be inclusive of companies that utilize computer systems for running part or all of their quality system. That has obviously taken on a very important role for a lot of companies and within the audit process. So we want to be sure that we're accommodating that. All references to the term product now read products and services. Now this has already been the case for quite some time. Clause 3 of ISO 9001-2008 states that wherever the term product appears, it can also mean service. The standard, again, they want to see even more companies, more types of companies utilizing ISO 9001. It's always meant to apply to service type companies. Now they're writing service right into the body of the standard itself. The term management responsibility has become leadership. Now this pushes the concept that management leads by example, by involvement. It does not simply direct that activities are performed. There's an even more direct clausal change related to that we'll see in a minute here. Continual improvement has become a large part of a larger section now called improvement. It promotes the whole idea that continual improvement is not the only aspect of improvement. We have systemic breakthroughs, we have reactive changes, we have reorganizations. All of these things can be thought of as contributing to the overall improvement of the system, and the standard wants to acknowledge those things. Suppliers are now referred to as external providers. This again goes to the idea of accommodating service organizations. Okay, probably the most important thing that's been removed from the standard. ISO 9001-2015 is not going to require a quality manual, procedures, or work instructions. Now let's talk about this for just a second. Again, the idea here is that this is a system, a standard for a system rooted in processes. The standard has always promoted the process approach. And the idea of processes is that you have consistent and effective processes. Now the thinking has been that procedures and a quality manual are one way to accomplish consistent and effective processes, but they are not the only way. They are not the mandatory way. So the standard has removed all references to quality manual procedures or work instructions. As an organization, it is up to you to determine what it means to have consistent and effective processes and how you will accomplish that. As auditors, we have to assess what you're doing and verify that what you're doing is consistent and effective. The management representative, as an item mentioned in the standard, has been eliminated. Now, what this means is not that we don't have a key contact anymore. Obviously, that's still going to be permitted, but the implication is that it's not just one person's responsibility to run the quality system. This is supposed to be the leadership team running this quality system. They are supposed to take ownership of their system. Now, for a lot of companies, this is already the case. When we go out and audit, we know that companies out there are running their systems as a team. We want to verify that that's the case. This is going to now be mandatory, that it's not just dumped on one person. The new standard has eliminated the term permissible exclusions. Now, what this means in practice, you can still claim certain items under what they're going to refer to as a non-applicable designation. And what that means is that this is going to then be subject to ongoing verification at each audit. Now, in practice, that's not terribly different from what we do already. We already are in the habit of verifying permissible exclusions at each and every audit. Now, the terminology has been changed. These are going to be referred to as non-applicables. Okay, we're going to do a section-by-section analysis now and dig into what are the highlights of the standard in terms of new content. As I mentioned earlier, sections 1, 2, and 3 are not specifically auditable. This is not different from what it was before. In section 4, the context of the organization, there are some key new questions that are being asked. What purpose does the organization serve? Who does it exist for? There's this terminology that's been introduced called interested parties. Who are the interested parties for the quality management system? These are things that each organization is going to have to wrestle with and ascertain on a case-by-case basis. Section 5, as I mentioned earlier, is called leadership. There is strong language in here that really drives the idea that top management has to be involved in the quality system. Has management made itself accountable for the effectiveness of the system? Has management made sure that the quality policy and objectives are consistent with the strategic direction of the company? Has the quality system been integrated into business processes? Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to be digging into your financial records per se, but it does mean that the strategic direction of the company and the quality direction of the company need to be on shared paths. They cannot be operating at cross purposes. And that's management's job, that's leadership's job to make sure that that happens. In section 6, of course, we have the new requirements for risk management. Planning is now viewed in an expanded light. Have the risks and opportunities been considered? Have we implemented actions for those risks? And they've also expanded the verbiage that's related to quality objectives. It's now mandatory to identify who's responsible, establish a target date, to figure out what you're specifically trying to accomplish. Section 7, the last of the foundation sections, is called support. There's a lot in here that's going to be familiar from Section 6 of ISO 9001-2008, as well as some items from Sections 4 and 5. There is one slightly new area of content in Section 7.1.6 where it asks, has the organization considered the changing needs and trends against its current competency base and figured out what's needed for the future? In practice, this shouldn't be terribly different from what you're doing already, but again, under the whole guise of risk-based thinking, this has now been specifically added to the standard. Beyond that, there is no other significant new content that you haven't seen already. That's also going to be true for Section 8. We've reviewed Section 8 operation against Section 7 from ISO 9001-2008 and have identified no new significant content that hasn't been present in some form already. That's also very much the case for Section 9. We've confirmed that it's very similar to ISO 9001-2008 Section 8, as well as being the new placeholder for the management review requirement. Beyond that, our analysis has concluded that there is no significant new content. And that's also true for Section 10, improvement. Very, very similar to past sections 851 and 852. And again, no significant new content. So hopefully what you can take away from this analysis is that the changes to the 9001 standard are minimal. They're manageable. Even risk is not such a new idea. If you consider, for example, that preventive action has been part of the 9001 standard since it was first published. So as to the question of do you have to overhaul your current system, our analysis has concluded that you absolutely do not have to overhaul your current system. The TC 176 committee has said many times over that they want to improve the inclusiveness of the 9001-2015 standard. They want it to be used in more places and by more organizations. If you tell over 1 million worldwide certified companies that they have to overhaul their system, it's not consistent with that ideal. It does not equal inclusiveness if companies have to overhaul what they're doing right now. So what does that mean? We've mentioned now that you don't have to have a quality manual or a procedures manual in ISO 9001-2015. But this doesn't mean that you have to take your quality and procedures manual and throw them away. If your quality manual serves a purpose in your company, if it is utilized, even if it's just something that you hand out to your customers upon request, absolutely keep it. If your procedures are doing a good job of defining your processes, defining how they operate, if they help facilitate customer visits, if they help facilitate your internal audit process or serve some other good purpose, absolutely keep your procedures. If your quality policy, if your quality objectives, if these items are well known, if they're adding value to what you're doing, absolutely keep those items as well. Okay, we're going to take a few minutes now and dig into some frequently asked questions that have come up in past presentations. Hopefully, those of you that have some questions, perhaps in the next few slides, will address those questions. Will our staff have to complete transition training? The short answer to this is yes. You will have to do some form of transition training for your staff. Now, at a minimum, what that's going to mean is we expect you to make sure that your staff is aware that there's a new standard. We expect you to make sure that you've assessed the standard's impact in your various processes, and if there's a gap, that you've provided training to fill that gap. It's entirely conceivable that the majority of your staff is going to feel no effect from your transition to ISO 9001-2015. So the people that are out there running CNC machines and turning out parts and filling in their inspection forms, this is going to be absolutely no impact whatsoever for those types of people. For others, there'll be varying degrees of impact, of course. Now, your internal auditors, will they have to complete transitional training? Let's talk a little bit about what's required. Internal auditing in ISO 9001-2008 and in ISO 9001-2015, it's viewed in the same light as any other competency within the quality management system. And that is that you, the organization, are responsible for determining what it means to be competent as an internal auditor and for what your method is going to be to achieve those competencies. It's up to you. You have to decide on your own what kind of transition training is going to be needed. Now, if you've got a seasoned team of internal auditors, people that have been doing your internal audits for many years, it's entirely conceivable that those folks can do a period of self-study and fall right into auditing the new standard. Obviously, the competency of your internal auditor is going to continue to be assessed by the overall effectiveness of your audit process, but ultimately the decision on what it means to be competent as an internal auditor, that's your decision to make. We've had several questions on whether the other standards, the other primary standards, are going to be updated. The information we have is that all of the major sector-specific standards, these would include TS 16949 for automotive, AS 9100 for aerospace, TL 9000 for telecommunications, they've all indicated their intentions to transition and to continue their alignment with ISO 9001. Now, the timelines for those publications are not fully known. They are, all three of them, projecting 2016 as a possible publication date. It will remain to be seen whether that holds. Now, there is one major standard that is not planning to come along for the ride, so to speak, and that's ISO 13485. That's, of course, the medical devices standard. ISO 13485 is in the midst of its own update, and they are targeting publication for early next year in 2016, and they will no longer be aligned with the current version of ISO 9001. So if by chance we have someone on the call today that is an ISO 13485 certified company, you will, if you wish to maintain ISO 9001 certification, some sort of arrangement will have to be made, and what that arrangement will be, that will be determined at a later date. This is an interesting time for companies that are actively pursuing certification. We're being asked almost daily, should we get certified now or should we wait? Obviously, PJR cannot make that decision for you. But it's important to bear some things in mind. First of all, ISO 9001-2008 has a little over 3 years of usability left in it. It's not going to go away officially until late 2018. So it's conceivable that if you get certified now or within the next few months, that you'll still get a full 3 years out of that certification. Also, very important to bear in mind, the first few audits to ISO 2015 are going to be difficult, not just for you, but for us as auditors. It's going to be new for us too. And obviously with the passage of time, we're going to be more comfortable auditing the new standard. This will ensure a smoother transition, but there's no need to run to the front of the line and say me first, particularly if you're implementing a new system. In terms of what you should be doing now to prepare yourself, we definitely recommend that you have a look at the IAF Informative Document 9 from earlier this year. It recommends a 7-step process to transition to ISO 2015. First, obviously, a review of the standard itself. When the standard is published, definitely purchase it, take a look at it as a management team, and identify what you feel the gaps are that need to be addressed. Put together an implementation plan. Assign the responsibilities related to that implementation plan. Make sure that any of your documents, including your quality of procedures manual, have been updated to reflect any new or revised processes. Provide necessary awareness and transition training. Complete a full internal audit, followed by management review. Implement corrective actions for any internal audit findings, and at that point, bring in PJR to do the balance of your transition process. One final point that I'd like to make on your documentation, for those of you that have a quality and procedures manual, we've been asked a few times, well, do I have to renumber it? For example, if you have a procedure that was written specifically for calibration, you might have the title of that procedure be Procedure 7.6, because obviously Clause 7.6 is the one that pertains to calibration. The title of that procedure can stay as is. However, the internal content of that procedure, if it says, for example, this procedure has been written to align with ISO 9001-2008 Clause 7.6, those things have to be changed, of course. But the titles of the procedure, the form numbers assigned to those things, if leaving those things alone works better for you, that's fine. If renumbering those things works better for you, that's fine as well. It will not be required that your form numbers and procedure numbers align perfectly with the new version of ISO. Obviously, it's important that you work with your auditor during the transition period. We are working hard to train our auditors and make sure that they are ready for the challenge of auditing ISO 9001-2015. We want to make sure that they are enabled to provide expert analysis on your system against these revised criteria. You should definitely think of your auditor as a valuable resource in this transition process. We're very excited about the publication of ISO 9001-2015. Our analysis has been that this is a beneficial update to the standard. We are looking forward to rolling it out for our clients. We are going to continue to provide you with timely information on the transition process. We're going to make sure that this transition process goes as smoothly for you as it possibly can. A couple of things I'd like to share with you in terms of links. We do have a side-by-side comparison on the 9001-2008 and the DIS 9001 standard. I've provided the link therein. We've also prepared a frequently asked questions report. It's embedded in our World Standards Review publication from this past spring, and there's a link for that as well. Finally, I'd like to invite you, if you're not already opting in with PJR, to please consider doing so. If you visit our website at www.pjr.com, at the very bottom of the page, if you put in your email address and click subscribe, you'll get all kinds of updates from PJR on the new standard, on pending webinars, and all kinds of other helpful information. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the question panel here, and I see we've already got several questions, so let's start kind of rolling down the line here. Okay. Okay, Jay Rogers asks, I'm a new quality manager, congratulations. How or where can I get training for ISO audits? Jay, if you mean where can I get some preparation training for being ready for an ISO audit, I would direct you to just go on the internet. There's all kinds of free correspondence training that you can do. Secondly, if what you mean is getting trained on being an internal auditor, there are numerous course providers that you can find, and again, I would just direct you to kind of Google some of that information. Okay, we've had some questions on the slides. The slides will definitely be available for download shortly after the presentation is completed. Question from Ed Gardner about the webinar and updates to the webinar. I will mention with you that, or to you rather, that once the FDIS is published, we're planning to have a major update to this webinar. So definitely tune in next month. We're going to have a lot of updates to the content here. Okay. Playman Christoph asks, what is your comment about the introduction of the new term issue? Interesting question. In terms of where the term issue appears within the standard itself, I think it's being viewed as kind of a general term, a nebulous term, issues that come up within the system, within the managing of the system. Internal and external issues, for example, is something that's mentioned in section 4.3 when we're talking about determining the scope of the system. 4.1 itself mentions determining what the internal and external issues are that are relevant to the purpose of the strategic direction of the company. So it's viewed as kind of a collective term. I wouldn't read too much into it. It's intended to be a very familiar term, I would say, and to kind of take the place of things like problems and requirements and things of this nature. Okay. Michelle Carenza, I do hope I'm pronouncing that right, asks, for Section 5 of the new standard, how exactly can management make itself accountable? What about management that thinks dumping it all on a key person or two that report back to them is counted as making themselves accountable? Great question. The short answer to that, Michelle, is we're going to look for evidence of participation. We're going to look for evidence of participation in the management review process, for participation in customer complaint resolution, in the corrective action process. We're going to look to see, are they involved in the planning of the system? And also, very importantly, we are going to be interviewing management. We're going to find out what they know. We're going to compare what they know to what we're finding out on kind of the front lines. That's going to be a very important part of how we're going to assess leadership and management's making itself accountable. Okay. Chris Sable, I think, is asking, will I need to maintain a records list? That, Chris, I presume is a reference to the requirement from ISO 9001-2008 that talks about establishing a policy for record retention. And within the new standard, there is, of course, the section for documented information. And there is some verbiage that pertains to retention of documented information. It does talk about retrieval, it does talk about usage, it does talk about retention. So do you have to maintain a records list? No, but you do have to have a policy for retention and disposition. So I would say that a records list is one possibility of achieving that. Okay, another question from Playman Christoph. Do you think that fixing a nonconformity lastingly is really an improvement? What is the idea of replacing the achievement of higher and higher goals continually, first time and every time, with corrective actions? Well, Playman, I don't believe that the standard does that. I believe that what we're doing is we're taking a larger view of improvement. Obviously, the aspect of continual improvement has been retained. There is a section for it. It's, I believe, section 10.3 in the new standard. But the standard wants you to view improvement in a larger context, not just in the somewhat narrow view of continual improvement. Okay. Playman Christoph again, in your personal view, which of the introduced changes is the worst for the future of quality management? Playman, personally, I don't think any of these changes could be considered negative changes. I've done an extensive analysis of this standard, and I do feel very strongly that these are beneficial changes to the standard, both for us as auditors and even more so for you as quality system stewards. Okay. And then another question here from Mr. Christoph. How is the use of preventive action as the most radical way of problem solving through elimination of causes will be regarded as risk management? The idea here, Playman, is that there was a lot of chatter about preventive action was going away because it didn't have a placeholder in the new standard. It's not going away. It's part of a larger risk management, risk-based thinking ideology. And being proactive rather, preemptive, addressing things before they happen. All of that is rooted in risk-based thinking. Okay. Kristen Gwynn asks, can we have a copy of the slides after the webinar? Absolutely. Those will be available for download. Okay. Okay. Victor Olgwin, I believe, asks, if a formal process for risk management is not required, there is a recommended training or literature we may take for better preparation. PJR does not specifically have training or literature on risk management. I can tell you that there are 2 published ISO standards that pertain to risk management. One of those is ISO 14971. It's actually a supplement to the risk management standard. The other, I believe, is ISO 50001. Excuse me, ISO 31000, and that is also pertaining to risk management. But there's all kinds of advice and counsel that can be reviewed for help on risk management. Okay, we've got someone just named Marketing Manager who asks, if a company is just implementing now, what cutoff certification target date would you recommend to work towards 2015 versus 2008? If I had to make a hard and fast recommendation, if a company is just now getting started, I would probably suggest roughly 18 months ahead of the cutoff date. So that would be roughly February of 2017, so about at the halfway point. Okay. Okay, Isabel Perry, talking about interpretation for small and medium companies, questioning ISO value and cost. If an external auditor tells your boss that the changes for 2015, your position is no longer needed, how do you answer that to the external auditor and particularly to your boss? Okay, again, Isabel, the idea is not that the position is eliminated or that there is no longer a key contact. The idea is that management is involved in the process to the extent that it's a team effort to manage the quality system. I know there's a lot of companies out there where there is a single person and they are the only ones that know anything about the quality system. That's no longer going to be acceptable. So how would I explain it to a boss? I would say you are expected to be aware of what's going on in this quality system, to be a participant in the decision-making process. You can definitely still have a key contact, a focal point, but you can no longer be ignorant of what's going on in the quality system if by chance that's how things are at present. Okay. Samantha Berg asks, how do you audit a company's effectiveness if you have no reference? Manual, objectives, work instructions to go off of. Wouldn't every audit be completely objective then? Well, Samantha, you have to remember that as auditors, we have a number of ways of assessing a system. We look for consistency of a process. When I teach auditors, when I teach new auditors, I always say that there's 2 stories in every audit, what the records are telling you and what the people are telling you, and hopefully they're telling you the same consistent story. You are required to have controls in place for your processes. You are required to have consistent processes. There's a number of places in the new standard where it mandates documented information be maintained and that documented information be effective. One example of that would be, for example, the requirements related to calibration. There is a documented information clause tying in with that. There is a documented information clause for the design process. So when we review design records, for example, we need to see that there is an effective process in place for design and that it's consistent. Okay, Scott Favreau asks, if we are up for recertification in 2017, will we be required to transition to the new standard at that time? Scott, we are very close to publishing our cutoff dates in terms of what audits will be offered when. I would say that if it's in early 2017, you'll not be made to transition. Depending on how late in 2017 you're going, you may be required to transition then. We will definitely work with you individually to make sure that you're fully aware of your options. Okay, Jay Lawrence asks, when will PJR start to offer lead auditor training at their various locations? Jay, we do not offer lead auditor training through PJR. We do offer only these webinars. In terms of lead auditor training, you would be looking for a training organization that offers certified lead auditor training. Okay, Joel Lozano asks, we would like to receive the new ISO 9001:2015 as soon as it's available. Joel, that will be available for purchase through the ISO website, www.iso.org. Okay, Samantha Berg asks, will we need to change all of our terms to match the new terms, supplier to external provider, etc.? No. If you want to keep calling them suppliers, there's absolutely nothing that says you can't do so. Okay. Question from Ralph McGee. How does the new standard work with ISO 80,079-34 explosive atmosphere? Currently, the standards work together. Ralph, I don't have any specific information on that standard, but I would project and presume that if it is an ISO publication, it is going to be transitioned to the Annex SL framework and will therefore continue to be aligned. Okay, Chris Sable asks, is it advisable to certify to ISO 31000? Chris, to the very best of my knowledge, it is not a certifiable standard, but I don't have that information specifically. I will say that certifying to a risk management standard would be an interesting option, but it would not necessarily be required. As to whether it's advisable cost-wise and so forth, I would say that that's for your organization to determine. Okay. Vincent Mendoza asks, some of the plants in my company are ISO 9001, some are not. Top corporate management does not involve itself in maintaining ISO certification, leaving it at the affected plant management level. How far up the chain does management responsibility go? We would look primarily at plant management. We would look at the organization level if that's how your quality system has been structured. Okay, Devin Jackson from, hello there Devin, asks, audits will still follow the process flow and not by sections of the standard, correct? Yes, that is absolutely correct. How will the auditor transition to top management? Top management will remain as the staff on location and will not include top management at a corporate headquarter location. Again, also correct. I do believe we've addressed that. Good deal. Okay, Sean Davis asks, why are they doing away with NIST traceability for calibration? Well, it's important to bear in mind the verbiage that's being used here. If you'll bear with me, I'm going to go right to that particular section and we'll take a look here. Okay, it is required, of course, that measurement equipment be traceable to measurement standards, traceable to international or national measurement standards. Now, it's important to bear in mind, Sean, that NIST was never mentioned by name in the standard to begin with. It's only ever been national or international measurement standards. So, in effect, this requirement is still very much in place. Okay. Mike Edar, I believe this is how it's pronounced. As an ISO, or excuse me, as an AS9100C certified organization, will the ISO 9001:2015 requirements also be required not only in our aerospace defense sector, but also required in our commercial sector of our organization? The commercial sector has always been overlooked in past audits. Mike, I'm going to try to read between the lines with what you're asking. I do know that an organization can still kind of specify what the scope of the system is and how that's laid out. And they can also be specific in terms of what that scope applies to and what it does not. I do not believe that's changing under ISO 9001:2015. Okay. Okay. We've got a question here for Julio Julio Ramirez. Does PJR have a plan for transition audits? Julio, we're very near to publishing our plan and working out those details. We will make that information available to you as soon as we have it. Okay. Okay, Victor Oleguin, I've received some information on training on ISO 9001:2015 in the coming month. Is it recommended to take this training or wait until September? Tough call. Depending on who the training provider is and what information they have access to. Obviously, the final standard's not out just yet. We have a very good idea of what that final standard's going to look like, but it might benefit you to wait, but obviously I don't want to make too strong a recommendation one way or the other. Chris Sable asks, are there any significant requirement changes pertaining to calibration? Not in our analysis. We've reviewed the section that pertains to calibration, and we've concluded that there are not any real significant changes. Okay, another question from Marketing Manager. Can a company transition during a surveillance audit? And if it does it start the 3-year period over? Yes to the first question, no to the second question. If you choose to do your transition as part of a surveillance audit, what that's going to mean is your current 3-year certificate would be revised. Let's say that your cert was issued in December of 2016 with an expiry in September of 2018 because of course that's the cutoff. When you complete your transition audit, you would get a revision cert which would still show issued in December of 2016, but now expiring in December of 2019. That's how that would work. It would be a 3-year, still the same 3-year period. Okay. Julio Ramirez asks, we recently received our recertification audit. Is it possible to have the next audit in 2016 with half for 2008 and half for 2015 in the same audit? Julio, I'm afraid that the requirement is that it's pretty much all or nothing when you do your transition. If in 2016 you wish to transition to ISO 2015, we can definitely accommodate you. If you wish to retain ISO 2008 for another year, we can accommodate that as well. You will have to decide. Okay. Lizeth, I believe, Sanchez asks, is the term improvement related to any Lean or Six Sigma strategy? I don't think that those strategies are inconsistent with improvement, but they're not directly related per se. Okay. Samantha Berg asks, if there are no work instructions or manuals to go off of, how will an auditor be able to ensure we are being consistent? Again, that's going to be rooted in the answers we get to questions from interviewing multiple persons and in the review of multiple records. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Leela Lindsay asks, we have a recertification audit coming up under ISO 2008. Now that we have heard the new requirements, we will be aware of them. Can we refer to the new requirements in the audit, or must we avoid that and only refer to 2008? Well, let me kind of pose a different scenario here, Leela. We've had some companies that have said that they want to write their documentation to accommodate ISO 2015, but they want the audit to be done to ISO 2008. That's a difficult proposition, but it's not impossible. Again, the preference is that if you're ready to transition. If you wish to stay at ISO 2008, then you should do so. Okay, we've reached the end of the list of questions here. I will give just an additional minute or two while we're waiting here. I will thank all of you for your time and attention. I do hope that you have found this presentation to be beneficial. Okay, and again, I'll invite you to tune in next month at our next scheduled webinar. We'll have some significant updates on the changes that were brought on by the publication of the FDIS 9001. One final item popped up here. Nona Thompson, information on ISO 17025. I'm afraid I do not have an update for you on that particular standard. I would direct you to our website for any updates on that standard. Okay, thank you all. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.